Yo guys, welcome to the video. This is Josh or Milky, and it's time again for another Torchlight season. So, as normal, we're going to go over the new season in this video. It is Twinightmare, and obviously with every Torchlight season, there's a new mechanic. They've basically changed every single legendary item in some way or another. They've boosted the effects of a lot of support skills and skills in general. Buffed a lot of stuff, nerfed a lot of stuff, changes to some heroes, a new hero. All the normal huge changes Torchlight likes to make every single season. But the first thing, of course, is the league mechanic that we'll talk about. It is called Twinightmare. And essentially, you're going to go into a map, and when you interact with a pylon, you are going to have a chance to go into a dream. Now, the dream will then award you with a bubble, which is a reward that you will get at the end of doing the dream. And each time you select one, you will increase your chance of the next map being a nightmare. Now, the nightmare does, I got this 100% certain, but the nightmare seems to be kind of the end of your run, which means there's a bit of, you know, RNG as to whether you get a really long run or a really short one. Maybe you just get the nightmare on the second one and you end up not getting that many rewards. But you can see here, this is at level 3. And it says removes 1 bubble and then adds 2 black sail bubbles. So these bubbles are your rewards. You can have a maximum of 12. And then it's in your next dream, nightmare is 10%. And I believe this means the chance to enter a nightmare is 10%. We do know the wording is sometimes a bit weird, especially on, you know, the old version of the realm that they probably used to record these videos. So it does seem to me to be that way. It might not be 100% true, but it does seem to be that way. Now, when you select a reward, you're also going to get a negative affix. So you can see this one says, all nightmare routes are able to summon the nightmare boss monsters. So essentially, you go into a good zone, you earn a reward, and then eventually you're going to be forced into a nightmare where you're going to have to fight through, finish it, and then you'll be rewarded with all the bubbles that you accumulated along the way. Now, it does have this thing at the bottom here that I've noticed in a few of the screenshots. This one says, upon entering a nightmare, you additionally gain all the bubbles that have been removed in the sweet dreams this round. So I believe this is like, because it's different on all of them, it seems to be like a random kind of effect you can get. So each sweet dream you end up going to might have a different effect that will increase the reward. So pretty cool. Again, there seems to be many levels to this, and it looks like a good mechanic, not only because there's depth to it, there's RNG, there's that chance for the big hits. They did say in the reveal you can expect to get really good things like Eternity and Box from this. But also, it doesn't really disrupt the maps as much. Last time, obviously, we had to leave the zone, load into a new zone, then we had to leave our map, go do the city, come back. This time, it's just you're in a zone, you do the mechanic, and you go about your day. So I think for that reason, it's going to make the gameplay feel a bit more fluent rather than, you know, going in and out of all these zones. And it's kind of a good formula for a mechanic. Most of the time, you know, if you increase in the rewards, you also increase the difficulty. As long as there's kind of an opt-out option, if you don't want to go too difficult, if you're not ready for that yet, I think this could be a really good one. Definitely my kind of mechanic, but Torchlight normally get the mechanics right, in my opinion. They do a pretty good job, at least they have with the last few. So next, we do have what comes along with this. Obviously, it's not just the rewards. They also introduced a new crafting system and a skill tree. So skill tree, very much something they add every single season. You're going to get to augment your experience within the mechanic, whether it's making the dreams easier, which is kind of the good zone where you're going to find those rewards, or making the nightmares easier, which is those more difficult ones where you have to do the objective in order to leave and still have your rewards. So that's the skill tree. Obviously, we're going to work towards this over the season. Hopefully, we can unlock it all. I think we will be able to, because we made that pretty clear in Cuba Opacity. But it seems really good. And now all this leads to the big kind of end game shakeup that this mechanic provides. And it is that you can now use the mechanic to craft normal gear with legendary affixes. So if you've ever seen a legendary item with an affix you really wish you could get on a rare piece of gear, well, now you can. It does come at a disadvantage. Now, I'll explain that in a second. But this obviously does open up a lot of opportunity for builds. There are some legendaries where there's one really, really good modifier and then a ton of absolutely useless ones. Now you're going to be able to get that on a rare piece of equipment. The downside, however, is it also comes with a malice. So you select the good one. You'll see here you've got all these options. It's going to select randomly and then make you choose between them. So you can see it chose 3 there, and it's going to give you 3 options. So to your item that you put into the machine, you'll see here it's these are the modifiers. It's just a random chess piece. You put your item into the machine, And then you're going to be able to do one of these three options. You can either do when the tier of the number 2 affix, so that'll be regen here, is higher than T2, replace it with a Sweet Dream affix, and that there is your legendary affix. This one, every 3 seconds, gain 1 stack of Focus Blessing. This is the implicit modifier, I believe. And then this one is upgrade the affixes next to the number 2 affix to T1. So, I mean, this bottom one's pretty good already, right? Because you'll get your first and third affix straight up to T1, which could be very good. Now, if you get something you don't like, you can abandon. Maybe you just want to roll it, see if you get anything good, and then if not, move on. However, of course, as with most things, you can't just have the good stuff. You also need to select a negative, and this one, some of them look pretty detrimental. Downgrades all the prefixes by 2 tiers. That one is very, very... that one's going to be a tough one. Replace the number 6 affix with a blemish. On a lot of items, this is definitely doable. Whether or not it's worth it obviously depends on the modifier that you get. But even if it doesn't end up being the best for endgame because of this kind of stuff, this will be really good to use to get really good gear because before you get 6 mod items with really good gear, it takes a while to get there. So this is going to make it easy to get those really good 5 mod items, I imagine. And then obviously you're going to have a blemish, which for a lot of people will be fine. I mean, last season it wasn't rare to see someone with a blemish on a really good item. It just was the way it went. Now, obviously upgrading all suffixes to T1 is almost definitely a bug. Probably just an issue with whenever they recorded this because T1 is the highest. Other than T0, maybe it means it removes all your T0s. Could be. If so, this is basically a non-issue, right? You just click this, and unless you've got T0s in your suffixes, this one will actually do nothing. So potentially incredibly good results if this one is correct, but it's hard to say. Hopefully it is, though. Hopefully it is. Now, we do have some other stuff. There is obviously a boss in this. There's always a boss with a Torchlight League. It's kind of a recreation of the Act 3 boss, the one before you fight the big guy on the platform. Looks a bit like Katava. It's a recreation of that. So Paloma, Queen of the Eternal Sun, could be really cool. And she drops the currency that you're going to need in order to craft those legendary affixes on your gear. So a good reason to do the boss, a good reason for the boss. You know, it's definitely going to be something people are going to want to do, as it's the only way to craft the best gear, as it seems. It's the only way to craft those legendary affixes on your gear. Also, a quick QOL thing to point out is that loot dropped a lot faster, and that wasn't sped up. The loot does drop faster now if it drops in a pile. So very cool change. Now, what else have we got? I believe we have some new legendary gear as well as a hero, but we'll look at the hero first. So the hero, Rosa is what it's called now. It is a block character, and the idea of a character that is most strongest when it's getting hit, and it requires you to get hit in order to realize its full potential, at least in Torchlight, feels like it might not be the best, but I am always willing to be wrong, especially when it comes to new stuff, because it could be cool. A sword and shield class is something this game doesn't have. Shields are largely underused. Block is largely underused. And you can see it's got an effect as well, where you're essentially going to pull all the mobs into you. You've got like a bit of a rage feature where as you get hit by mobs, you're going to get this murderous intent, it's called, and you're going to deal more damage. So a bit like rage, where you're going to deal more damage the more you get hit. Seems like an interesting character. Not got any ideas off the top of my head as to what you do with this, but I'm sure some people will have some fantastic ones. Check out the Discord. I'm sure many people are talking about it in the Discord. Also, some new skills. Star Stalker, it's like an empower skill. Just a few little ones. I don't think there's anything to write home about. A new beam skill. Big one here. Enamore. This is a new item that drops from the end boss, it seems. And it says, and it has different affixes. I don't know if this rolls with a wide range of rolls, a bit like a false god's amulet. But it's got many different things on it where it says +1 elemental and erosion resistance for every legendary gear equipped. That's kind of whatever, right? That's just 10 LE and erosion res. Pretty nice, sure, if you've got all legendaries. -3 LE res for every, which is kind of contradictory, which makes me think maybe this obviously is a roll. But then you've got good ones like +3% and aura effect and curse effect for every blemished affix. Which could be very powerful, because if you get more than one of this mod, let's say you get an Enamore with 2 or even 3 and then it's corroded, well, this item quickly becomes absolutely crazy. You're going to have 9, 12, 15, I don't know, a lot of aura and curse effect for each blemish mod, and you could definitely get away with that, especially when we've seen how the League mechanic crafting system works, where you can get those good mods at the cost of blemishing your item. So could definitely be one to look out for in the end game. I imagine there will be some great use cases for this, and potentially a chase item with the best modifiers for sure. Then we have a really interesting item for the non-movement speed based builds. Now this game typically is movement speed based. You play things like Cast When Channeling, or maybe you play Train, or the Seething Spirit Rayhan. But if you're like a Whirling Blades or a Leap Slam kind of focused build, you get around with your movement skill, then these boots are actually pretty good. Your movement speed is fixed. You're going to be a bit of a slug, but every 2 meters you move, you gain a stack of Enduring Advance. And when you get 2, you restore 30% of missing life and energy shield when you're hit, which is already great. When you have 5, you gain up to 400% additional critical strike damage, which is amazing. That's a lot of critical strike damage. That's probably double damage on a crit build. In a lot of cases, you're going to get up to that 400, 500% mark range, so you're going to get 80%, maybe a double damage in some cases. So a very interesting item. And then what I think is the most broken item I've seen so far, well, the name is obviously wrong. It's not going to be called that. But the idea is it's a 1x1 divinity slate that copies the last talent of all adjacent slates to this slate. So 1x1, which obviously is the smallest, so it can have 4 adjacent slates. It's basically a 1x1 when you pick the modifiers, and it can have 4. So I imagine every single build in the game in some way or form will want to run one of these. You can only have one, but I reckon this will be just an absolute auto include in like every single build. So if you get one of those, you're doing pretty good. Now, some changes to heroes. Obviously, every season they change stuff. They don't always hit. You know, last season I'd say they were a bit of a miss on what they updated, but this season they're going to come back, try again. We've got changes to Frostbitten Jammer, Space-Time Elapse Yoga, and Ranger of Glory. They're the big ones. So Frostbitten Jammer got an entire rework. They even reworked Freeze to kind of accommodate how she works now. I'm not going to go completely into that. You can check out the patch notes if you want to read what she does. Maybe we'll do some stuff before League Start if we find some interesting stuff that we can do with her in terms of League Starter. But it is quite in-depth. Basically, it takes more to freeze mobs now, but the freeze duration is really long, and the damage kind of scales with the freeze duration because of things like extreme coldness. You can see here, your freeze effect gains an additional effect every 0.1 seconds, and it's -7 to cold res. Now, if you have a 1.5 second freeze duration, that's 15 times, that's 15 times the buff. So 15 times 7, you got -105% reduced cold resistance, which ain't that bad. That's pretty good. So, and it can go up to 20 times. So in the best case scenario, if you manage to extend your freeze duration to 2 seconds, then it would be -140. But of course, as soon as that unfrozen, it would no longer be the case. So you would want to go beyond 2 seconds, but for the sake of the math, 2 seconds obviously would be the highest damage increase you're going to get. Elapse now works with Reap Purification, which is a great change for him. Something people... Elapse is a favorite. A lot of people love playing dot builds, but it's just not quite been there. People have having to go on, Lethal Flash, even Gemma last season with the Ignite build. This season, maybe Elapse is the king of dot, as he is kind of meant to be. That seems to be, his entire identity within the game. Hopefully, he gets to see some play. Now, there were also some big changes. The trade house was combined between the regions. So if you didn't know, before this season, Asia, as in everywhere except China, in Asia, that all the countries in Asia except China, then NA and EU were grouped together but separate from the Chinese realm. Now, the Chinese realm is where the bulk of the player base is, and the economies were vastly different because of the volume of players there. So there was much more things available. We're maybe not on the lower end, so we think more pedigrees of the gods that you've got to get from killing Traveler, or just boss drops in general. So those items were much cheaper for them. They had much easier access to these rarer things. And it's much harder to monopolize markets. If you go onto a stream and see someone playing something and a lot of people are trying to copy them, then you can immediately buy the entire market. As of season SS2 at least, if you could just take over that market yourself. Now, in a bigger economy mixed with the Chinese realm, hopefully that isn't possible, and the availability of items makes things much easier for people. That is the hope. Whether or not there are some potential issues that come along with it. Obviously, there could be much more advanced kind of stuff going on in China. Obviously, they're more accustomed to this. But I think largely, for most players, this is going to be a buff. it may make some things more difficult in the short term, but I think largely it was better to get this out of the way. I think it was always coming, and just the game will adapt, and the regions will adapt as well. So I think a great change in terms of the game's health in the long run would be my thing. Next, if you're interested, there are 2 new game modes in Torchlight Infinite. You can play solo self-found mode if you just want to play on your own, you don't want to use the trade house, or the team up feature you can see here. This is a bit of a hint towards what's coming later on, not in this video unfortunately, but multiplayer has been teased as to being available at least within the mid-season of this season. Not a guarantee, but that is what they said. As well as SSF, if that's not something you like, but you want to challenge yourself, you do have the hardcore mode available. If you're a hardcore gamer, maybe you want to do both. Maybe you can do SSF and hardcore. But obviously, this game is its first time, and if you've played the game a lot, you'll know that there's some bullshit. There's no better way to put it. There's definitely some bullshit. So be careful going in. But if you like it, have a good time. Let me know how it goes. So let me know what level you get to. Apparently, it's very, very difficult. Obviously, because there are the random one-shots, getting into T8s, high T8s, killing the Traveler. Probably going to be pretty tough, but I'm sure some of you will do it. Then, big one, obviously, item filters. You can now create your own filter within the game. It does look pretty tedious to do, I'm not going to lie. If you look at this screen and you think you have to go through everything, you have to go through all the compasses, all the proof of the Braves, all the blueprints, all the other items, all the gear affixes. It's going to take a long time. Yes, I'm going to make one. Yes, I will share it for you when it's done. Please don't badger me. It looks like it's going to take me 19 years and a degree. Maybe I'll have kids by then, who knows? But one will get done, and I will definitely share it with you. Give me a minute, all right? Just let me work on it. But it is great that filters are in the game. It is going to be a vast quality of life improvement for most players that choose to use one and make their own, or borrow one from their favorite streamer whose video they like whilst they're talking about it. And then it's also going to have a knock-on effect on the economy, as people are going to have easier access to these kind of like rare modifiers on rare items on the ground. Typically, you'd either have to look at every single rare item that dropped, or none of them, because how do you distinguish between them anyway? Obviously, when you go into the higher time marks, every rare item that drops on the high filter has got 2 decent modifiers or 1, and it's just tedious to go through and look at them all. So now you will know when something drops that you want to pick it up, because you have specifically designed your filter in a way where that's the case. Good change. Let's hope they, at least looking at this, improve the UI. But we'll see. Also, if you are a pet enthusiast and you've got a very large bank account, you can now switch between your pet pack spirits without clicking into the page. You can just do it from this right here. You see the button on the right? You can just select a different preset from this page. So you'll be able to swap onto your MF pets or your damage pets much quicker, which is nice. I will be using it. I will not lie. I will definitely use it. I'm sure some of you will too. You definitely should. You should have multiple setups. Next, what else do we have? The help menu got a bit of a buff. You know, they've tried adding in a bit more help within the game, so you don't have to get it elsewhere. Very nice. But let's move on to what is my favorite change. Always, you guys know me, I just like killing monsters and picking up the loot. The trait deck and the chaos deck got a massive change once again. So they've moved away from the last season. They moved away from the first iteration of this system, and now they've gone to an even broader one. They're making it much more easy to sustain tier 8 beacons, which is going to be a great quality of life improvement to a lot of players. So many people hate it when you get into those week 1, week 2 stages and the beacons just shoot up in price, but you're not ready yet, and it sucks. So now you're going to be able to farm beacons. Watchers drop twice as many T8 beacons now, so they're going to be flooded. You're going to be able to almost self-sustain, I would imagine, if not completely. Pretty close to it. As well as that, they've added a ton of new chaos cards. They've added many more for each of the mechanics. You'll see God of War down here has 7 cards, which means 7 different ways to augment the mechanic or guarantee the chance that you see it within your map, which is very nice. So you can choose. The idea is that instead of last season where it was quite homogenous, everyone was just using the trait cards that granted additional quantity. Well, this time around, you may want to spec into certain mechanics, and in order to gain the rewards that they provide. We'll see if that's the case. I don't know if I'm sold, but I have the ultimate faith that it'll at least be fun to experiment with to find out. What else have we got? So we've got God of Machines doing some stuff. You know You know the stuff, right? It's got machines. And the stream is dying. No, we're back. The progress here you'll see is 1 of 2, and that's important. So it actually reveals it here. You can see this indicator that shows how many maps. You don't have to click on it anymore. But also, every single round now will be drawn with a 1 of 2 card. This basically identifies how many maps you need to run before you will then run the map with this card active, and you'll be able to draw a new set of chaos cards. Before, you could draw a round that had 3 cards that needed 6 maps, and they could all be trash. But this time around, if that happens, you're always going to have a card available to you that says 1 out of 2. So it's going to be much faster to cycle through those cards and find those real big jackpot rainbow chaos cards. So I expect to see some very cool loot explosions this league, as people are going to be able to much more rapidly search through the chaos cards to find the good ones. Hopefully they didn't make them much rarer to kind of account for that. That'd suck, but it is what it is. Now, to any of you City of Eterna enjoyers from last league, if you thought to yourself last season, damn, I wish I could just run the City of Eterna over and over again, well, you now can. It got added to the core game as a kind of droppable item, as kind of a token. Think of it like a forbidden tome. If you play Path of Exile, you'll be able to buy the item, run it, and you'll be able to start unlocking your city. So you've got the each of the squares for the city, you'll be able to buy an item to complete one of those, and then every 9 you'll run the city. And you also don't have to buy you don't have to get the Psalms anymore in order to unlock the Endless City, so you can go straight into that. You do still need to get the Psalms. That's so that you can improve the city, but if you also want to choose just to specialize in the city, then you're obviously going to have it all leveled up. You're going to be dropping more candles. You can also now trade the candles. So this, if you like the city, could be a really cool way for you to print FEs early on. We'll see. They also did mention that because you're not gaining the benefit of map modifiers on the ruins that you're going to run here, they buff the loot in them. So you're going to get more loot in here. City of Eterna could be an absolute login, but you're probably not going to get the league mechanic in there, as it is a completely separate piece of content. So you might not get the league mechanic. You might not get to be experimenting with the Dream and Nightmare if you choose to just run the City of Eterna over and over again. But it's an alternative form of content. As this game grows, it's probably going to have many more of these. I think it's a positive. You can see here the fuel on the left that he needs. It's a different one for 83, as is 85. Eternal Reverberation Eternal. But seems pretty cool, right? More content, more stuff. This game's going to grow. There's going to be new stuff added, and there's going to be more opportunities for you to specialize in a certain thing. This is just one of the first examples of that. Before we kind of had POB and mapping. Now we have POB, mapping, and city. So much more things. Oh, and I guess bossing, if you want to include that. Yeah, more and more stuff. New pack spirits. If you like pack spirits, if you're an absolute oiler and you've got some spare dough lying around, go and get the packs. If not, don't worry about it. They did make it much easier to get the seasonal pet. They made it kind of like twice as likely. And you can also get extra boons or something. You can get extra pack spirits early on. You get like 10 instead of 8 when you buy them. I don't know. If you're into that, sure. It is better, you know, instead of... Basically, when you open the seasonal boon before, every time you got a legendary, the first time you got a legendary would be a 1 in 4, right? And the next time would be a 1 in 3, and then a 1 in 2, until on the 4th it was guaranteed. Now it's a 2. You only have to go up to 2. So if you get the first one, it's a 50-50 whether you get a pet. And then on the next one, it's guaranteed. So it's a little bit better. The cost to guarantee that you get it has definitely gone down. Hopefully you still get the additional token with it. Otherwise, it's pretty much exactly the same. But I don't think they tried pull a fast one of us like that. All right. Yeah, and I think that is about it. Unless you want to go and watch this and see the Q&A that we did with them afterwards. You can see me, Riker, Tenki. Had a little conversation with them about all the good stuff they've got planned for the season, how they think it affects the game, what their thoughts are behind designing it. That was a long chat. I'm sorry if it was quite rambly, but I wanted to let you guys know all about this season from my perspective. And in terms of what I'm going to be league starting, if that's what you're interested in, I don't know yet. Well, you can bet your ass I'm going to be looking at doing train. Let's see if anything else crops up there. We have done train a lot. I don't want to bore everyone to death by doing train again, but if I absolutely have to, you know damn right I'll be training it up. All right, I'll see you next time. Have a good one.